Shadow the Hedgehog is a character with a complicated backstory. The origins of Shadow are so mysterious, and it's one of the most compelling Sonic narratives ever told. Even Shadow himself struggles with understanding his true origins about who he is and why he was created. You have to ask yourself, how is a character who was supposedly created 50 years ago have the exact same identical appearance and abilities as Sonic the Hedgehog, who came way after Shadow? Fans have concocted a theory about the origins of Shadow. This is something that a lot of people have headcanoned over the years, and it feels like out of all the theories you could possibly attribute to how Shadow was created, this one absolutely makes the most sense. But after all these years, this theory may have finally become true and confirmed by Sega. To understand the theory, you must first know the origins of Project Shadow. Project Shadow was conceived over 50 years before the Black Arm's arrival on Earth. For those of you who don't know, Shadow is at least part Black Arm's alien. This was conceived by the president of the United Federation, which is like the United States counterpart in the Sonic universe. The premise of Project Shadow was conceived with hopes of achieving mankind's ultimate eternal dream, which is researching for immortality. However, the true intent for the project was to use results to develop weapons of mass destruction. The president personally requested Professor Gerald Robotnik, who was Eggman's grandfather. Initially, Gerald refused, believing that this crossed the limits that man should not tamper with and that they would use his research for war. So, you know, he wasn't a bad guy after all. He was just dealt a very unfortunate hand. However, Gerald Robotnik believed that he could co-opt this research in order to help find a cure for a terminal illness that his granddaughter, Maria Robotnik, was suffering from. That's why Gerald eventually accepted the request and agreed to lead the project on Space Colony Arc. In the beginning, the professor and his colleagues researched the Chaos Emeralds, which resulted in the creation of the Chaos Drives during tests to apply Chaos Emerald energy to living beings. You will notice that these are used to power the many gun robots you will face throughout Sonic Adventure 2. When the test proved successful, the project moved on to creating the prototype of an immortal being dubbed the Ultimate Lifeform, and that is where we get Shadow the Hedgehog. During development, Gerald needed help with his work, and as such, he made contact with Black Doom, the alien leader of the Black Arms race, during the 50-year return of the Black Comet, in exchange for the 7 Chaos Emeralds being delivered to him in 50 years. Black Doom even assisted the professor with his research, going so far as to provide his own genetic material in the form of his own blood. The first Ultimate Lifeform prototype that was produced by Project Shadow was actually the Biolizard. When he was brought to life, his external engine and chaos control inducing organ were working normally. The Biolizard demonstrated many of the desired traits as he grew, including regeneration and self-reproduction, though he required a life support system fueled by chaos drives in order to remain viable. While the researchers were overjoyed over the Biolizard's evolution, their joy proved brief. In addition to having an unexpected and exponentially fast growth rate, Biolizard was like a primitive animal, not like Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic and all of his friends who are anthropomorphic animals that are sentient beings with access to traditional morality. He did not have the strength to walk, and eventually he became so unstable that the researchers had trouble controlling him. So over time, the Biolizard was actually scrapped, and now this is where the DNA of Black Doom comes into play. It's not clear as to whether or not the Biolizard contains Black Doom's DNA, but we know for sure that the next Ultimate Lifeform definitely had Black Doom's DNA. Doubts about Project Shadow began within the government after details leaked about the violent nature of the Biolizard. People were questioning the duration, significance, and safety of the research. Internal staff had witnessed the prototype going out of control, and with contact of the Black Arms aliens, the government was getting extremely skeptical about this and were looking to shut down the project. In hopes to keep Project Shadow going, which is in turn what would keep his granddaughter alive, presumably, Gerald Robotnik actually offered the Gizoid, which is Emerald from Sonic Battle. He's an ancient robotic superweapon that he had discovered, to the government as a bribe. Unfortunately, the bribe did not work as the Gizoid went on a rampage on the Ark. Despite all of this, Project Shadow was eventually completed after years of research, when Gerald actually produced a more advanced version of the prototype of the Ultimate Lifeform with Black Doom's DNA, which is Shadow the Hedgehog. This is where the significance of the fan theory comes into play. However, the difference between Shadow the Hedgehog and the Biolizard is that Gerald imparted Shadow the Hedgehog with a heart and personality similar to that of Maria in hopes that he would not become a weapon. In addition to possessing immortality, Shadow did not need machinery to live, could complete tasks alone, and possessed both high intelligence and his own identity. The Hedgehog himself became close to those living on the Ark, especially Maria, who shared his curiosity of Earth, though he would occasionally ponder about what his true purpose was, and that is something that seems to have plagued him to this very day. We all know what happens next with Space Colony Arc. The government got more and more paranoid about the Project Shadow, and they ended up going to Space Colony Arc to actually shut down the research. They got into a scuffle with the researchers and started attacking all of them, and Shadow and Maria tried to escape from this, but in the crossfire of Shadow trying to escape, the government actually killed Maria Robotnik, which traumatized Shadow as he was sent on a pod back to Earth. The government eventually found Shadow and took him to Prison Island along with Gerald Robotnik, who they forced to continue working on his research for Shadow Shadow, but he went mad with grief because they just killed his granddaughter. So while Gerald was still working on Shadow the Hedgehog on Prison Island, he actually secretly programmed Shadow to want to carry out revenge against humanity once he awoke and altered his memories. In addition to that, he also concocted a plan that would have Space Colony Ark crash into Earth. The military knew how dangerous Project Shadow was, and they eventually sealed the island, abandoned the professor's research, and then executed Gerald Robotnik. Which brings us to Sonic Adventure 2, and then brings us to Shadow the Hedgehog. And even further past Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog, this brings us to the present day of Sonic and Shadow Generations, which actually is an unreleased game, but clearly based off of what we're seeing here, it's going to delve a little bit deeper back into Shadow's past. There's still some things and questions left unanswered, and there's still some more story to be told. Everyone who played the Shadow the Hedgehog 2005 game will remember that the game was received with very poor reception. However, the story of Shadow is still something worth exploring. There's still tons of questions that could be answered for Shadow. We're basically going to get a do-over and maybe get some more expansion to the lore of Project Shadow. With that being said, a brand new pre-order for Sonic and Shadow Generations has just leaked out, and now we get into the insane fan theory. If you look at the pre-order leak right here, one of the rewards that players will get for pre-ordering the game is Gerald Robotnik's journal detailing Shadow's creation, and if you zoom a little bit closer in on it, you will see two things. You will see Angel Island as well as the temple that appears in the Mystic Ruins in Sonic Adventure 1. So during his research and trying to learn the powers of the Chaos Energy, it's no secret that Gerald Robotnik stumbled upon Angel Island and modeled some of his creations after the Echidna tribe. It's extremely clear that when you look at the interior design of Space Colony Ark, Gerald Robotnik studied the structure that was found in the Mystic Ruins and on Angel Island in an attempt to harness his Chaos Energy. The first thing he probably discovered was this temple in the Mystic Ruins. If you've played Sonic Adventure and you made it to the end of the Lost World level, you will get to this mural right here, which depicts perfect chaos wiping out a city. It's no surprise that the civilizations that existed prior had this knack for creating murals that accurately predict events that are going to take place in the future. The first thing that was seen was this perfect chaos, so that's probably what Gerald Robotnik based the first Biolizard off of. The Biolizard bears a lot of resemblance to perfect chaos in a lot of ways. In addition to his ability to harness Chaos Emerald energy, it's very likely that based off of this new discovery of Gerald's journals, that perfect chaos is actually what the Biolizard was based off of. Similar to how perfect chaos is kind of like this unstable, out of control monster, it's no surprise that the Biolizard probably ended up emulating the same traits, and that's why that the research had to be scrapped, because he was becoming unstable. So this leaves Gerald with other options on trying to create the ultimate life form. After Gerald's failure to create the ultimate life form, and with time running out on his research and the government on his back trying to shut down the project, he then actually made it onto the surface of Angel Island. A lot of the discoveries that Gerald Robotnik made on Angel Island and the Mystic Ruins can be reflected in the construction of the Space Colony Ark, which also, by the way, you could consider this some sort of like floating island. Looking at the construction of the Ark leading up to the cannon's core, you'll see many similarities, such as the pool that Sonic slides down. You'll see this little temple area. You'll also see the snake that's similar to the temple that you see in Lost World. Also, bringing this back to the mural theory with respect to the creation of the Biolizard, you'll also notice there are artificial chaos which are scattered throughout Space Colony Ark, and these were created by Gerald Robotnik to resemble an ancient god. Probably the most obvious evidence of Gerald's discovery of Angel Island and the Mystic Ruins of them all was the fact that there is a Master Emerald Shrine located directly on Space Colony Ark, so there's no way that Gerald did not model a lot of this off of Angel Island, and this leads us to the fan theory of the mural that we discovered in Hidden Palace in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which depicts something like a supersonic hedgehog flying and trying to fight Dr. Robotnik over the Master Emerald, which is something that also happens in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. One thing that's for certain is that the Echidna tribe, or whoever is responsible for creating these murals, has accurately predicted many things that are going to take place in the future, which probably intrigued Gerald Robotnik when he was creating Shadow. So presumably when Gerald discovered this mural on Angel Island, he saw the supersonic hedgehog with the quills standing up, and this is what he used as the basis to create Shadow the Hedgehog. The biggest dead giveaway is probably this. So if you look at Supersonic in Sonic Adventure 1 and Sonic Adventure 2, you will notice that prior to the redesign where his quills like stick up more, you will notice that Shadow the Hedgehog's quills are the exact same as Supersonic's, which explains why base Shadow the Hedgehog's quills look the exact same as Supersonic's used to, because Gerald based Shadow's design off of Supersonic. Do you want to get even more crazy? Well, look at this scene where Shadow the Hedgehog has wings in the new Sonic and Shadow Generation screenshots that leaked. You will notice that since Shadow has wings here, and then once again, bring it back to the mural, if you look at Supersonic, it looks like he almost has something similar to wings. So once again, this is a little bit more out there, but also another parallel that we could potentially draw. So now when you're playing Sonic Adventure 2 and you hear Shadow say things like, hey, maybe there's more to you than just looking like me, you kind of understand some of the context behind this. And now, given this new pre-order leak that potentially canonizes the most popular Sonic fan theory to ever exist, it all starts to make sense when you connect things. Now, it's not 100% confirmed yet, but now based off of this, it's very likely that Sega is definitely borrowing from the popular fan theory. It can't be a coincidence that Shadow the Hedgehog looks exactly like Sonic and has all the same abilities that he has for the most part. That would just be too good to be true, especially when you consider the fact that Shadow the Hedgehog is artificially created. And this is actually a new development because I've recorded most of this video a couple days ago, but we actually have 4K versions of Gerald's journal, and this actually reveals a lot of the things that we were talking about. The first page depicts Angel Island as well as the mural in the Mystic Ruins. It says, "I deciphered the engravings on redacted I found on a previous dig in the Mystic Ruins jungle and calculated the location of a fabled flying paradise. I went along to verify my findings and was rewarded with the spectacle of an Angel Island. The land was vast, lush, and hosted a number of biomes in close proximity to each other. I believe I could see an entire floating city at one point. Most majestic of them all was a shrine devoted to what appeared to be a massive redacted. Could this be the legendary redacted? Probably Chaos Emerald in the first box and Master Emerald in the second." He says, "I dared not approach or overstay my welcome. As much as I wanted to explore every inch of this island, I felt that it was a sacred land. Just setting foot on its soil felt taboo. I didn't know if any of the civilization remains. The land is vast and my stay was brief. The majesty of the emerald and the shrine will stay with me for the rest of my life." It's definitely pretty crazy to see the contrast between Gerald Robotnik and Eggman, because when Eggman sees lush grasslands, he wants to pollute them, and Gerald thinks it's angelic and beautiful. But it's confirmed that he went to the Mystic Ruins, and it's also confirmed that he went to Angel Island, so there's no way he didn't see both murals. Do you guys think that the theory of Gerald discovering Angel Island and basing Shadow's design off of Supersonic, which is why they look so similar, is actually true?